Good evening and welcome to Mindful Life 247. I'm your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is the 27th of June 2023. Yes. In this beautiful Twin Isle Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, that's where I am coming from. At least you may be listening to this very likely in the same Twin Isle Republic too. So, yo, we're in paradise, folks. Act like it. Yes, Gerard Llanos, what's going on? Yeah, I was out in Trinity East today, had a nice conversation with the youth. There are some good youth out there. The youth's nice out there. The children would be fine. Paradise. Yes, Gerard, paradise. The children would be fine, man. Don't worry too much. They'll be good. Had a good conversation out there with them, and I'll see if I can get a little snippet of some of the stuff I spoke about, and a video might be coming on that too. But speaking of the youth, speaking of the children, speaking of the youth men and them, well, I saw a story come across my Facebook today. Good night, Wendell. I saw a story come across my Facebook today, and I was like, You know, like, the more I gave thought to it, the opinions kind of changed a shade. It seemed a bit complex, and you know, that kind of complexity is something I was like, you know, it would make an interesting topic to discuss on. So this is an account coming from someone, I believe, who would have vested interest in Trinity College Mocha. Now, Trinity College Mocha, if this entire account is false, then this is all a hypothetical. Don't come for I. Go for the lady who wrote it over on Facebook. But I don't actually believe it's false, because it's a common thing in Trinidad and Tobago. So it's not a stretch to believe this. Dear Trinity College Mocha, why would you do that to those boys? One, and it goes on in a list form, a numbered list form. Why would you uphold the rules and regulations that continue to separate us? Two, why would you segregate those boys from their fellow graduating classmates of 2023? Because of their hair. Their hair? Too much class in the classroom, Gerard says. These children, number three, these children were ushered and rushed in through the side entrance like slaves because of their hair. Now, the connotations are coming in strong there. Side entrance like slaves because of their hair. Number five, these students' names were not called to receive their certificates because of their hair. Six, these students were shunned to the side of the church behind the wall because of their hair. Seven, those students who were called to receive their certificates by accident, as the teacher probably forgot to blacklist them, were told to go back and sit down because you're not going up there because of their hair. Though these students were being told, number eight, these students were being told by their admin for over a year that they need to cut off their hair. Cut their hair. Okay. Number nine, these students who have been a part of their student council struggling against the administration for the right to literally be themselves and to keep their hair. 10, these students who have abided by your archaic rules have groomed and combed their hair to satisfy your colonial and racist needs, just to be told that it wasn't enough to gain access to a certificate they worked so hard for. Gerard Llanos says ninja hair not allowed. Okay. Number 11, these children whose parents, when speaking up about this blatant discrimination and disrespect, were told to shh. Number 12, these children who sat there confused and hurt were told to wait, you'll get it after the ceremony. Number 12, these children who sat there confused, right? Number 13, sorry. These children who can't understand why they have to cut off their hair. Number 14, these children who excelled in both their academic studies and extracurricular endeavors were told no because of their hair. You know, I think a lot of what went into this, and nothing I say here is meant as a personal attack on anyone. I am just discussing and speaking about this as I thought about it and I am thinking about it. But something that seems like it clearly went on here was what you call poisoning the well. The post made assumptions and stated assumptions that were not necessarily proven. They were just taken as assumptions. They were just taken as assumptions. So, to say that it is racist is an assumption. We don't know if their rules are different for different races. We do not know that. So, the racist part is an assumption, just to be clear. And it is an assumption that you know when good night Anil Sugrim Sugrim. Yes, many Christian religious organizations do not accept men or males with long hair. That is a fact. And there is where I find some things curious. You see, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have different schools. We have board-led denominational schools, and we have government schools. Now, the denominational schools are seen as prestige schools because by and large, they get better results. Now, the boards would tell you that the reason they get their better results is because they stick and hold to their old time-tested conservative ideals. That's what the board will tell you is the reason they get better results. It could be argued that if you want to go to a progressive school that changes rules and allows different things to happen on a whim and allows students to dictate the policies and dictate the styles and etc., and they would change uniforms every year if needs be. If you want that, go to a government school. Because to me, something seems counterintuitive. ORL, blessings. Something seems counterintuitive to me. It seems counterintuitive to me to want to go to a school that has strict discipline and gets a certain result for it and want to reject the strict discipline that the school has. That doesn't seem like it makes total sense to me. Because here's the thing. I do not believe that Trinity magically turned on this rule this year. Almost all of these prestige schools, occasionally someone tries to make a big thing about it, but many of these prestige schools have rules very similar to this. And I actually don't buy that it's racist. Some might argue it might have a colonial history, but I think that might also be a strained argument because cut and cropped hair in nearly all of human history has always been considered an image of a more disciplined person. If someone wants to rebel, in nearly every rebellious image, it's untamed hair. I don't like the games that we play sometimes. Like, we don't know this. Like, it's known. Look at the most disciplined organizations by and large, and you see that they cut hair. Okay. Now here's the thing. Maybe I want my children to grow up on the wild side. And I want them to have their hair loose and any way they want. Well, for me, I am aiming at doing homeschooling, so I could do that and have my little brilliant vagabonds. RL says, was the school system before better than the school system now? Always wanted to know. I might say yes. Canute says, greetings in the name of the Imperial Majesty, love and guidance to all. You know, you have to put on the air. From the time I see the word imperial, you know, you have to get it out there in a certain tone. So it's not a race thing. We're losing everything. Johnny Ringo, it could seem like that. It could seem like that. Now, here's where the balance is for me. Here's where a legitimate balance is for me. And this is the problem with our whole public-private system that we have set up. The school is paid for by the government. The teachers are paid by the government. So it is legitimately a more difficult thing to try to tell students that now, when y'all are paying for this, because it's not like it's private where you're personally paying to go there. We're all paying for this. So parents could legitimately say, my taxpayers' funds are funding this school. And then parents could legitimately say that the options for locations in school, that's just the nature of it. And they place my child in this school, that's the nature of it. So there are arguments there. You see, for me, if it was totally a private school, like a completely private school, then I am all for it. Cut your hair or don't go to the people's school. Like, follow the people's rules. You have an option to go or not go to the school. If you decide to go to the people's school, follow their rules. But then if it's a public school where we are all paying for it, and then you kind of have to function within the rules of general society. You know, it's nearly like now you're a public building as in a certain sense. And you see, this is the problem I think we would always face in our split rule system with the concordat there holding back the power of the state from the religious sects and boards that are there trying to influence from the bottom go up. There would always be that balance with the concordat holding back a lot of pressure right there in the middle. I think that's just the weird dynamic that we have. I think it is better than many of the alternatives, although it creates some friction like this. I think it's better than the alternatives. And personally, as for me, this is a personal thing I'm saying here. If I have some little springlings, some boy children springlings, and I really like them with their hair long and wild, then I find out what is the school policy for it, and I put them in a school that would allow it. To me, it seems strained. It seems strained. The logic seems strained because the number 8 here, the number 8 in this list of grievances here, the number 8. These students were told by their admin for over a year that they need to cut off their hair. And it was repeated for emphasis. Cut their hair? And okay, I understand for some people that level of discipline seems ridiculous. And for some people, uniforms seem ridiculous too. Like the minute things that all come together attempting to hold in and train discipline by proxy, they could seem ridiculous one by one. Like, do we need, I remember in my school you had to wear black socks, and the black socks on the black shoe just didn't feel right as a youth. You wanted that white socks on the black shoe, and it's so trivial. Like, you going to suspend a boy for white socks, for a white socks and a black shoe? I mean, maybe not suspend, but it's all in a combination attempting to train discipline. And if you don't think you want that kind of disciplinary changing, then that kind of disciplinary training, then I think maybe we should allow the changes to go on in another school. Like, there are government schools where the students voted to change the uniforms pretty regularly. I know a particular government school where the uniform changed like 3 times over the last 7 years. Maybe that's where you want to send your child. So what if it's religious? Tini, I'm not saying that I'm not sure what you're asking there, but I'm not saying that they have the benefit because they are religious. I'm saying you should allow that because those are their rules. And here's the thing. We all, well, not we all, but many parents want their children to go to those schools to get the benefit of those age-old rules. Yeah, it seems nearly unfair to me. Is discipline required to be a better self? 100%. But it seems, it just seems a bit unfair to want to go get the benefit that they say they give, but you don't want to go through the process that they have for it. That does not seem right. It's like, imagine you have a sensei. Well, can you sig trigger? It's not as simple as school rules, because some students were not allowed in Trinity College Mocha. Poster I saw over on Facebook. Some boys were not allowed to graduate, at least the official ceremony outside of the graduation. They got their certificate. It's not like they were kicked out of school. They got their certificate, but they were not allowed to enter the formal side. They were ushered in from the side door. They were kind of kept one side. They were not allowed to be a part of the formal ceremony because those were the rules. As stated here, they were told over a year ago. Well, you see, this kind of seems like, to me, protest action. It seems like they set up this protest action. If you were told over a year ago that you have to cut your hair if you want to do XYZ and you decide not to, you understand there are going to be these consequences for it. Well, that's the nature of that. But the only religion that asked men to grow hair is Rasta. None of the guys had a ras. Well, some people may say they had a burgeoning ras. So the ras may have been in plaits waiting to grow out longer. So I don't know. I don't know their religious beliefs. But that's kind of inconsequential. Tanil says the growth of the hair I'm talking about. The hijab is not part of some school's uniform. Well, Tanil, my view on that is if a school determines that their rules would prohibit hijabs, I think that should be up to the school, you know. That's how I see it. I remember some schools and some people are only modernly sensitive about some of these things. What Raki, is it the string? The string that is a religious ban. It is a religious ban, and some schools you aren't allowed to wear it in school. And some schools you are. Okay. Listen, if you go to the Astra school, your skirt needs to be longer than your knee. Part of the school rules. If you get a skirt longer than your knee in Form 1 and hit a growth spurt in Form 2 and it gets shorter than your knee and your player going inside of the people at school with a mosque in the compound with all your knees exposed going on like that, they will send you back home to get a longer skirt. And I think that's their prerogative. Yeah, you know, Trinidad so warm. Them long skirts is make my legs sweat, you know. My leg is sweat with them long skirts, you know. Okay, go to a school that allows the short skirt. That's exactly my point, Canute. That's exactly my point. Most of those schools, most people know that's how those schools function. Coleman Rucker says system conditioning to conform. Yes, it is. You are right. And the reason you want to send your child to that school is because you want your child to conform to that system too. If you do not want your child to conform to that system, don't send them to that school. Keep them home, homeschool them, teach them the esoteric knowledge of all eternity, and allow them to be your unique buttercup and grow them up like that. That's your prerogative. In Trinidad, you just need to write the Ministry of Education and you get permission to keep your child and homeschool them. Free up yourself. You send your child to the school with the name because you want them in that conformity. Let's not mama guy ourselves here. There are parents committing fraud about which religion they belong to try to get their children in certain schools. And then we're pretending like it's not about trying to get the benefit of those same schools. RL says, I honestly find religious tradition should be left out of schools. Well, send your children to schools without religious traditions. To me, that's like 1 + 1. That's 1 + 1 = 2. I find that's like so unfair. That's like so unfair. You don't want your children to grow up with religious education. Okay, do not grow them up with it. To me, you see, especially in a country like ours, where we are attempting this multiculturalism experiment business, which is actually very difficult. When you get down to the nitty-gritty of all of this, it is extremely difficult. There are just a lot of questions that we gloss over and don't actually really ask. But when you're doing things like that in a country like ours, you have to leave a lot of latitude. Okay, we have general rules, laws. Don't go killing anybody. You cannot abuse your child and call that your religious practice. And I know the definitions of abuse could be a little edgy around the borders, but we have some clear definitions that we know are abuse, and stay away from that. But other than that, if you want to make your child wear hijab from the time they're 5 till the time they're 18, is that anyone else's business? Some parents decide to shave their child's head bald. Like, personally, I find when you send your boy child to school, the first day of school with a sparkling bald head, I find that is wickedness. But what am I going to do? That's the parents' prerogative. They like the clean bald. And you know, you just have to leave some room for that. That's the way I see that. And the RL says, I would like to see some data from religious schools versus public schools to see for myself. A good thing you asked that, RL. You got me excited there, sir. It may take me a little while to pull up this story. The Catholic schools in the US compared to public schools, the education gap that happened during the pandemic. There was a recent thing like that. Catholic schools outperform public, and let me pull it up. So for those who may be looking over on YouTube, you know, I have to pull up the YouTube chat too. Wow, so many things that, you know, I just don't do sometimes. I just don't know. My apologies to the people looking over there on YouTube, and you may feel like I'm ignoring you. My apologies. It's not my intention. My intentions are good. Let's see if I can get the chat. The hair rule is so dotish. Hair regulations in all schools should be abolished. In QRC, it's against the rules to plait your hair, Infinity Ultron says. Here's the thing. Personally, I think maybe the hair rules might be ridiculous. Well, then I won't go to a school with the hair rules. And as I said, I get it that it gets a bit edgy in Trinidad and Tobago, where all of these schools are sponsored by the state and you are placed there. So there is some room where you are allowed to question some of this because of the state funding in there. That's just the reality. But on the other hand, we also know that most cases, people want their children to go to these schools. And these schools will tell you, if you ask them, school, why do you perform better? Well, because we have a package of disciplinary training methods, one of which is telling the boy children to keep their hair under a certain length. If that's what the school says, I am Milori. That's exactly what I'm saying too. Yes. So yeah, there's the placement side and the public side, but in reality, we know that most of these schools, you almost surely, if your son is going to a school where they are telling him he must cut his hair, almost surely that was a school that you put down as one of your top choices. Almost surely. So you wanted to go to this school. But you asked about this, RL. You asked about this. Catholic schools outperform public and charter counterparts in first post-COVID national assessment. Bad news about the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on learning was even worse than expected, though the numbers were probably not a complete shock to parents who have spent months juggling Zoom schedules and wondering if their kids were learning anything. Children in the United States have suffered unprecedented losses in math and reading scores, according to the National Assessment of Educational Progress, a congressionally mandated report card on academic progress. So this isn't just some fly-by-night Nancy story. Some Catholic priest is making this up. This is from their Congress. Years of progress in math were reversed during the pandemic as math scores saw their largest decrease ever. By the way, this is factual in the United States because they have the statistics to prove this. Hey, Island boys, what's happening, bro? They have the statistics to prove this. But I would wager that it is no different in Trinidad and Tobago, just by the way, as pertaining to the scores. Years of progress in math were reversed during the pandemic as math scores saw their largest decrease ever, and reading scores dropped to 1992 levels. Nearly 4 in 10 eighth graders fail to grasp basic math concepts. Not a single state saw a notable improvement in average test scores, with some simply treading water. But the nation's Catholic schools either held the line on their previous scores or lost substantial less ground than both public and charter schools. And here's further proof to this, RL. Further proof to this. I wonder if I could find the article on quick notice. I don't know how many of you could remember. Think back to when the schools were reopening. And they were reopening for only the CXC students. And they were complaining that they were getting less than 30% attendance. And they interviewed the principal for what's this school down by Mukarapo side there? Fatima. And they asked him about it and he said, we have no problem. All of our students attend class. They had no missing attendance. And when many of these government schools were lamenting about their attendance during the pandemic, many of those schools were saying, actually, that's not a problem for us. We don't have that issue. No issue with us. It's fine. Fine. No problem. No worries. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? And maybe it is part of the package deal that includes cutting your hair. Now, I hope nobody gets me wrong. I am not one generally tied up in the colonialist style. If you look at me, I'm not the clean shaven, clean cut kind of guy. If you saw my hair during the UE time, my hair was pretty wild too. I'm all for it. But I also understand that if you want what they offer, you submit to their rules. It's a strange thing to me. I see that even in religions, like someone would go and become a Muslim or become a Christian, and then they're like, oh my goodness, what do these people want from me? You don't have to be a Christian, you don't have to be any religions. If you go join the people's religion, then you submit to what their rules are of it. Like, I don't see the fight up in this at all, really and truly. As I said, the fight up for me is on the public school side. I am Ilori says, exactly, everyone went to school because Fatima said they must. RL says, where do religious schools get funding from? Is it also government funded? Yes. And that's what I was saying at the very beginning, where there is a bit of mixed thought for me on that. There is some mixed thought for me on that. The government funding does create a kind of public resource side to this. And if it is on that public resource kind of side, then you can't be discriminating against people for their hair on a public resource kind of side. You understand what I mean? If we're all communally paying for this, then the rules regarding this must be as such that everyone has access basically equally. That's why, maybe some of these schools need to go more private and maybe allow the government to fund the student. So the government pays for the student. If the student wants to go to a denominational school, then the government would pay the denominational school on behalf of the student. So the denominational school is basically private, and we don't worry about this. If you don't like the rulesy business of those denominational schools, you go to a public school, you go to a government school, and you have much more lax rules. Maybe these government schools, and we may reach a stage like you see in the United States, where the private schools may be the ones with the uniform, etc., and the public schools, the government schools, no uniforms and much more lax rules and all of this. No, I'm not using Live Studio. Where the other 90, it comes from the religious board and a lot of donation sheets. But to get a government job, aka service, what do you do? Cut the hair, not so? Yeah, can it? Yeah. I am seeing you repeating damaging society, Gerard Llanos, but I do not get the context you are attempting to say that in. I do not get the context you are attempting to say that in at all. What is damaging society? How is it damaging society? Who is damaging society? I'm just seeing that on repeat. And to me, a lot of the damage from society seems to come from when we move away from a lot of these more sensible rules that seem to be holding in a lot of society. Of course, Rooney. Jump right in. Make sure this is on that DWAL.
Good night.
Good night.
Hello. So I don't like that you're calling this colonial, right? The reason I don't like it is because if people have their religion, it really have very little to do with the colonial side of the wanting to be like, I don't know, probably the way people use it, that way, coming from like slavery or whatever. But if I have my religion, and in my religion, I believe it is wrong for men to grow their hair. It has nothing to do with the colonial side of life. It has to do with my religion and my beliefs. I kind of comment on my school, much like years ago when the teacher went to lunch me and they told her to remove her hijab, and that was a big thing, remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, but it was their school. Now, I personally didn't like it either, but if that's their school rule and as the students have to remove their hijabs too, the Muslim girls have to remove their hijab when they're going to lunch me. Well, so I was told. told that. But yeah. So if you go into a school and these schools they perform well, children the parents is 5% their children to these schools. So it's nothing like well you're living close to these schools, so they send you there. You know, send you there. You just have to put in the work to get into some of these schools. Right? So again, which they're just by chance, right? And how with these parents, I personally I don't mind privatizing these schools again. How much parents that send their children to these schools will like it?
And
Plenty won't.
you know, I saw someone on YouTube point out, Jamel, you see I'm reading my YouTube these days, Jamel Jerome says Minister Hines has long hair, but Minister Hines is an adult. You see, that's a whole different thing. That's kind of the whole point of it. It's attempting to train an ethic. And Ronnie, some of the colonialism talk might come directly from the religious point of view. There are many people who believe that the religious point of view came about because of colonialism. Some people believe that. But you know, just today I was reading about some history in Ethiopia where they have some churches carved into sheer cliff faces built in the 4th century AD. That's 400. Yeah, 400. Nothing else. Yeah, 400. That's before anyone dreamed of colonizing anything on this side of the world. Ethiopia had churches in crags in the rock. Like, I mean, some of the religion colonialism arguments don't really add up and match up to history. So you want them primitive, the school, so a lot of our black kids would get left behind, like our race not behind already. So wait. So if a school puts rules to cut your hair, black people would get left behind because they are incapable of following rules to cut their hair. Do you understand how insulting that is to black people? This is the soft bigotry of low expectations. Like, black people can't cut their hair. Black people are the kings of the barber shop. Like, come on, man. Listen, the reality is, if there was a rule forcing the students to grow ras at shoulder length, some students would have wanted to cut their hair in rebellion for it, and they would have wanted to get rules to make sure I could cut my hair. So it's about rebellion to some extent, and the school has a disciplinary level. Yeah.
But Nathan, this is the thing, right? Of all the pictures you see, well, I didn't go through all. I see the first 2 pictures and I was already done. How come there's only one race here was long? Or I alone catch that? Or it don't have no Indians in that school? You know why? Because if an Indian parent, sorry to say, you have to get called into school for the child growing out the hair. That hair is gone. Because what is the problem? Go cut your hair and when you leave school, grow your hair again. There's really nothing to it, you know.
Here, back up.
It's not affecting your education in any way. But to answer this person, with regard to if I want them to privatize the school because they're getting left behind, no. You're getting left behind because you're not following the rules. If you don't want to follow the rules, don't go to the school. That is all. It's real simple.
Baka says we fight to send our children these schools because they are the top schools. Why your hairstyle matters. Okay, have you considered that maybe your hairstyle matters has something to do with why it's the top school? As I iterated, these schools have a whole suite of disciplinary training measures. You don't get to wear white socks. Your socks can't be under a certain length. It's not supposed to be over a certain length. You in the days of baggy pants, your pants couldn't be over a certain bagginess. Then in the days of tight pants, your pants couldn't be under a certain tightness. There are rules.
Yes, Mr. Destroying Society. Where you come from? Oh, we come from you. Come here.
I know. Before you all go out of that, and on the race topic, I don't know if some people. So I think personally, I think some black people, some people of African descent in Trinidad, they went to Afro mainly schools, so they didn't see that schools. I don't know what they think schools are. If schools are run by some secret super anti-black organization that is, we just don't like the melanin. Listen, I know schools that gave someone in my days. I don't know what is the top Indian hairstyle now, but in my days when I was a little younger, the older guys, because I don't know if you all remember the World Cup in the 2000 and early times, and lots of those Italian and Argentinian and Spanish footballers had the long hair, and lots of Indian boys in Trinidad had at that time had this long hair with the little pretty boy thing, man, and they got in trouble too. I know of some deans who personally cut some boys here with scissors, and their hair could cut real easy too. Like, it's nothing, it's not a, let me just say it's never a racist, because I don't know that. I can't say that. But in many cases, it's not really a racist you like that. Are we saying that every rule should be accepted and not questioned? It's a grant, no. If anybody listens to me, that will never be what I see. Never, ever, ever. Ever. But here is part of the problem in that. We don't know all it takes to get a school to function to the top. So maybe while we question if a rule makes sense and we discuss it, we must follow the rules of the people whose schools we want to go to. As I said, there are government schools where you can go and have anything you want and graduate. But we don't want to go to those schools. Have you considered there might be a correlation? Yeah, Gerard.
Good night. How y'all doing?
I'm well, man. I'm always well.
Nice. So, in the first place, I have no problem with the top 80% of what you have to say. Yeah, you want to go at prestige rules, follow the prestige rules. But then we get to this particular circumstance that you started the scenario with.
Yeah.
You already passed for one of the top schools in the country. You already went through at least 5 years of schooling. You have already excelled academically, athletically, extracurricular wise. You are already networking. Your relationships, and that's the only value in prestige education as far as if you're asking me, is your network. CSE is irrelevant. So you're already working your way to the top. You have, and this is a position I maintain. We live in a society where blackness is under attack. Oh my! So you're rich. Yes, but wait. You reach the finish line, and you put in the work. And I don't want to call my brother name, but I see my brother on the red carpet on BET last night, who I went to school with. And I remember some of the pressures people who want to innovate, who want to do something great, who want to cut their own lane, that they faced in this Trinidad and Tobago, coming out of that same school system that damages innovation, that damages innovative people, that sends them running out of our society. I think that somewhere along the line, especially in later secondary school education, going into A-levels, going into university, is something in the system is
Well, Gerard, as far as I understand with this particular instance, it's not that it negated. They still got their certificate, they still graduated, they lost nothing in terms of their future consequence from this. They weren't allowed in the formal ceremony. And I understand that's something. Right. I understand that's something you would never be able to get back. I understand that, and I agree it's something you would never be able to get back. But bear in mind, it's not like they lost their future because of it. And to me, the argument that they got to the finish line is exactly the reason they should probably be more condemned. It's like this Ja Morant. You reach to the NBA, you reach out of the hood, and then you want to go and play with guns in a nightclub. No, they should not be soft on you. You are being ridiculous. Yes, I understand you reach real close to right by your goal, but that's exactly the reason you're supposed to watch your step even more carefully. So I don't take that as a reason for it. As for Trinidad's innovation and self-identity, I don't know if you went to UE, but the UE I went to, UE is all about that kind of self-identity and, feel yourself and local Caribbean identity. And UE, I don't think UE is stifling blackness in any way. And UE is the main tertiary campus in Trinidad and Tobago.
I think our whole society is polarized on that whole idea. We either celebrating the wrong kind of blackness or stifling the right kind of blackness.
Right. I don't disagree with you there. I was exactly going to get to that. So on that side, I think you is really into that. But the problem is, who is to determine what is really pro-blackness, what you want from blacks? When some people think about pro-blackness, they think about going back to black ancestral worship and wearing ancestral clothing and being ancestrally spiritual, and that's when they see pro-black, that's what they see, and growing your hair out and expressing your Africanness. That's some people. While for some people, pro-black is building the best you could with all of the resources that might be present. So if doing so means wearing a suit, so be it. If doing so means speaking English, so be it. If doing so means that you recognize or believe that another ideology makes more sense or is right, then so be it. So there are different versions of the pro-black. So that's why I roll my eyes because saying that pro-black nearly means nothing to me. In that sense, it nearly means nothing. And I don't believe Trinidad. Just now, I just want to cover all that you said. Then we could go again. And I don't believe that the innovation in Trinidad is stifled because of our society in that way. I think the innovation in Trinidad is stifled because of the PNM style of governance and the style of governance we have had in Trinidad and Tobago since independence, where we have choked the opportunities of people for doing things like that. We have a finance minister criticizing young entrepreneurs for trying to buy things foreign and bring it down. He was criticizing them for that, like if somehow they need to all go out there and be associated brands and build up factories and make snacks or something like that. That's the problem we have. We have a senior political class that stifles innovation. It's not about the society. Trinidad society, when it comes to that, Trinidad society leans into innovation. I could tell you, nearly everyone in my peer group has some kind of entrepreneurial business or something they're trying. The problem that most of them face is that when they actually go out there into the business world, they recognize, wow, this thing is impossible. Why is it impossible? The government is making it so. That's the issue. Not that these schools are telling boys to cut their hair. I don't think that's true at all. Sorry, my opinion. I don't think it's true.
So, allow me to posit that a society in which a successful academic, a successful student, a person preparing to be successful at life can stand and say, hey, today, this is me. The society that does not allow, because I see it deeply,
college and pick up the diploma and say, yo, I work 5 years for this, but I get through. The same school that will not allow that young man or that young lady that moment is the same political system that don't like when things don't sound or look the way they're supposed to, quote unquote. It's the same, it's another manifestation, and somebody been throwing around the colonial will, and I love it, the colonial will in this context. There's a particular system of thinking that in the first instance doesn't lend itself to success anymore. One. And two, definitely is culturally insensitive. It's not only culturally insensitive in terms of what has been, but it's culturally insensitive to what is coming. Please go ahead, man.
Yeah, Ronnie.
Okay. The reason I fed up at this is blackness and attack and all kind of, I really can't take it, I really can't. We live in a country, this is not America, well, they have American talking points. We almost know why people run around this place, I don't know if you check. Black people like almost 50% of the country, right? So it's not a blackness that's being under attack, right? And as you rightfully said, the wrong blackness is being promoted. You look at these wonderful hairstyles that these boys and they had, and when you go and you look at who does normally have these type of hairstyles, the school don't want that. The school don't want that. I went to school with a young lady. She was not African, and she wanted to wear her hair red. And the school told her, Miss Lady, you cannot wear your hair red. And you know what she did? She went and buy a black wig and went to school with a black wig on her head. And on the weekend, she wear her hair red. Right? Because you know why? You have to follow the school rules. There are rules. You follow the rules. If you think that the rule is unfair to you, go and find a school where the rule fits you. That's real. Because if you go for a job interview and they tell you, we don't want a hairstyle in we place, what are you going to do? Or they being racist to me? No, that's people on them rules. If they don't want it, because it's associated with a certain type of people, let me be real, if you look at the styles, it was nothing proper. Sorry to say. Just do, if you don't want to conform, which is fine, you don't have to. Don't go and make things difficult for people already under pressure. You know how difficult it is running a school, especially an all-boys school? You know how hard that is? You have to fight not only with teenagers, but with boys. Trinity is mainly a Afrocentric school, right? A lot of the students in Trinity is African boys. It is not that they have no sitter they run over by East Indians. So if you run in a school, it's already teenagers, which is a problem. You're in a school with males, which is a problem. You're in a school with Afro male. You're already fighting against so much. So when I tell you, I don't want you in that hairstyle, don't tell me nothing. Go somewhere else where you are accepted with that hairstyle. But in my school, where I wanted uniform, I want you all to conform to a particular style, a particular way. Do it.
You know, the thing, as you said there, and I really don't like the gaslighting and the Emperor's New Clothes. I don't know if anybody know that old story about the Emperor's New Clothes where he was actually naked and all the big people pretending like, oh, it looks so fancy. Where we all pretend like we don't know things. Like we pretend that we don't know when the young man reaches 16. Oftentimes the ones that are more rebellious are the ones that want to grow their hair. Growing your hair is often a sign of rebellion. In many races, it's not just a black thing. And many races, parents argue with the, listen, if I was 16 and I went home to my parents' home with my hair just growing long just so, they would not have approved of it at that age. And it's not just colonial thinking. That's what I wanted to separate there, where you're talking about colonial thinking and joining it to proper manners. Here's why I have a problem with this. I remember the United States, as they reached in their insanity about 3 years ago, there was an African studies an African studies project that went on to list principles of white supremacy and principles of white colonialism. And among those principles were timeliness and needing to have a good attendance. You're understanding? This is the direction some of these things go. Because what they're saying is that when the Africans were out there, and if you think I'm joking, I can pull up that article for you. When the Africans were out there in Africa, that's not our natural way. The white people came here and they're trying to dictate our pace and put time and put the white man's schedule on people, while scheduling is just sense. And if discipline works, it doesn't matter if it was taught to you by the Chinese, it's discipline and it works. Look at Chinese schools where they are attempting to push real hard discipline on their engineering students. They sequester their engineering students. In other words, you have a little genius baby, they recognize by the age of 5, he's going to leave your home and come to live in the school here. And when you see videos of that, you know what you see with all of them? Shaved heads, like a monk. Are they racist against the Chinese here? They don't like that Chinese straight here, you know, they really don't like that. It's self-hate. That's why they shave those boys here. It's yellow hate. They hate yellow. That's why, no. It's discipline anywhere in the world. And it's so ridiculous to me. I keep saying this. It's so ridiculous to me that the black population that seems to be suffering in most places in the Western world is the population that always is arguing to hold on to the most regressive, toxic, poisonous cultural traits. It's a frustration to no end to me. Like, of all the battles we want to put the strength of melanin behind, it's for boys to grow their hair and be more indisciplined into graduation. Like, you can't cut your hair for graduation. Like some of those boys here was that, bro, cut your hair for graduation and grow it after, as all the prestige school students did. Come on now, man. We have to, and with the colonialism thing, I always talk about the colonialism. I believe part of what you said is true. With the governance side, I do believe that's colonialism. But I don't believe discipline is colonialism. The difference with the government is our government doesn't want to enact discipline on us. Our government is a paternalistic government. They act like they are our daddy, and we do not have the sentience to make proper decisions on our own. So they make all of the important decisions on our behalf. That's the colonialist, paternalistic kind of governance that I am talking about. When I speak about the colonialism, that's what I'm talking about, where they want to make all of the decisions on our behalf. It's not colonial to attempt to teach discipline. That's not colonialism at all. I reject that outright. Yo, Canute, what's up, bro?
Hi, cool, bro. You just say exactly what I was coming up to say, because when I bring the Chinese point for their students at the age of 5 and 6 when they take the engineers and they cut their hair and put them in uniforms. Now, part of the uniform thing is actually to create a sense where people understand that you are not better than the next man next to you. So that all of we are one and all of we can grow together. Now, I went Trinity, right?
And I see you have a ass now.
Right. Exactly that. So I can tell you, in growing up in Trinity, I was the one that wanted to grow my hair. I try, had afro, but when come time for graduation, they would tell you within the year of Form 5, bro, for graduation, we need this from you. Cut your hair, do so well groomed, clothes neat. They tell you that. So if you choose not to conform, then you just don't be part of the ceremony, right? It's simple like that. After you could grow your beard, grow your ass, go to UE, it's the same thing. Now, besides Mocha, I also teach in Trinity East. And I thought Mocha had it bad. Trinity East
an inch.
Bro,
I never hear anything bad about that.
can you? I notice many black people who speak about some of these things don't know. They're speaking from a bubble. They're speaking from a black only bubble. You speak to some Indian boys, and there are some Indian tanties out there whose son, he wanted the little fluff that he could do so and shake on top of his head. And from the time he do so and it dance, tanty send him by the barber. It have to be dead. I must do so, and I only feeling picker. I remember that. Listen, I used to do some barbering. I do all kind of things in my time. I used to do some barbering in my time, you know. Yeah, and you cut in some here. I remember a young fella came over, a neighbor of ours came over by us one time, and he came and he telling us how he wanted, and you know, he would just want a thing and he leave the top a little bit, and he mother peep through the fence and say, "Hey, cut off all! Cut off all!" It's not a race thing, really and truly, you know. It really is not. That happens in all races. It does.
I had the principal shave my head ball in school.
Jeez, man, you're not doing that one.
That's a different time. I remember some of those. I remember Dean took a boy's white socks because I honestly, thinking back now, I don't even know what was the addiction we youth men had to white socks. Like, bro, a black sock's not doing you anything. But took a youth man white socks and take it on his car and wipe the car, and his car was always nasty. Wipe the car so with a white socks. And you know what I mean?
No. The guy below there, Gerald. Now, I went through all of that, but that did not skew my creativity. That did not stifle my creativity. That did not stifle me becoming an entrepreneur. And I went through that. Now, I went to the same prestige schools because I know the same thing you're saying, the following and the backing, the connections that you meet out of the prestige schools would lead you to a path for success. And that is why most people want to go to these prestige schools. So just conform. UE, I was the most outrageous. I had the biggest afro in UE. That's it.
And
So,
right, Jared.
this is not taking everything you all say because 90% of what you all said, as I said, I agree with. As it relates to discipline and conformance and all of that. There is a danger here in this conversation, though,
Yeah.
which is we are isolating the situation, our beliefs about the schooling system that we all grew up with, and we all have similar experiences in the different schools we've been to. And Trinidad and Tobago's particular form of colonial mental illness, our particular form of self-hate, our particular form of, I have a word for it now, pigmentocracy, our particular form of colorism, our particular form of classism. I remember as a young man, all years working Pizza Hut was Trini White Uptown. And later on, all years working Pizza Hut, Downtown Black. There are some subtexts in our society, and we cannot isolate what we do in schools to what we become, to how we treat each other, and what our preconceived notions of people are and how we treat them economically and socially because of race and race identity. And for me, when I say damaging to society, what I am saying is we're not thinking about our national psyche from the school level. And we're not thinking about some of the choices, like taking a boy white socks and washing the car with it. We're not thinking about the message that we send in.
What is the message that is sent? What is the message do you think is sent with it?
What's the message?
I don't want to answer that question.
But I could get you a message. Don't come with the wrong socks. That is a message.
We taking that.
And
Bro,
guys, Canute.
Bro, alright, so you mentioned that the jobs in Pizza Hut being going from uptown to downtown, right? And now I agree with that because I've seen it too. But a lot of the people that are in these jobs now, if you look at the statistic for it, not much of them come out from the prestige side of the schools, and you have to ask yourself why. Because the junior sec system didn't have the amount of rules that the prestige schools have. And you would come to think that a lot of these rules actually would be working at a point in time. So yes, I agree that society changed, and what would be the socially acceptable norm has changed. But the structure itself was working at the point in time.
Familiar Stranger says, for a society that breaks all the rules, we draw the line at hairstyles. And I am not sure I understand how, blessed night Chris Garcia, I'm not sure I understand how that's an argument. Like, if we are a society that is too much of a rule-breaking society, then shouldn't it be that we try to keep stricter rule-keeping with the children, to train them in rule-keeping? That seems like a sensible conclusion to me. And I don't think, as I've said before, I don't think our society breaks all the rules. I have said before that I think part of the issue is our society has too many constricting rules that are remnants from colonialism with the paternalism that I spoke about before. So people break those rules to just do what they need to do. That's how our society functions. But I don't think that means that we should have less rules in schools. And as I said, there are already schools with less rules. If you want a school with less rules, put a government school as your first choice, second choice, and third choice. And you would go to a school with less rules. I strongly disagree that the success you all are oversimplifying this issue to just rules. I'm not totally getting what you're saying there. And Gerard, like some of that, I wonder which comes first, kind of the chicken or the egg in some of these instances. Here's what I mean. Like, there is discrimination in Trinidad and Tobago. I wouldn't doubt that. There is discrimination all around the world. And oftentimes, discrimination could come from illogical prejudice, but discrimination could also come from experience and from even popular culture. Right? So, is Laventille or is someone from Laventille more likely to be criminally oriented because Laventille has a bad name, or does Laventille have a bad name because there were people from Laventille more likely to be criminally oriented? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? And understanding, as I always see, it's not like there was a start or a stop to this. We are just thrown in a moving machine. So, okay, we enter and Laventille and the hotspots are as they are. What do we do about that? Okay, yes, there are some class issues, some pigmentocracy issues, because there are some historical issues there. What do we do now? Should we attempt to make people stop being prejudiced somehow, or should we attempt, seeing the world as it is, to lift some of the people from some of those areas that are being prejudiced against? Lift them to the highest, because I struggle to fully believe the pigmentocracy when the Prime Minister is a dark-skinned black man from Tobago with a backyard accent.
You struggle? You struggle, sir?
What?
I do struggle with it as well. But let me put it this way. Crime, social underperformance, the creation of the underclass.
Mm-hmm.
They are all functions of people being robbed of opportunity. People are being denied opportunity.
Mm.
Because the more you squeeze some people out of society, they gotta find their own lane. It's shocking how many
Are you sure that's not by choice?
Well, of course it's by choice, but of course it's by choice based on the design.
On what design?
There was a time we made it up for ourselves, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time when people around the 70s, around Point Fortin, they will tell you about Make Move.
Mm-hmm.
And Make Move was when people in Point Fortin started to canvass and picket companies for refusing to hire blacks and Indians.
We going back a far distance here with the bank. Let me tell you, let me tell you what I believe with the
I
banking.
was about to track forward,
Okay, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, but the point of the matter is that racial injustice is a well-documented phenomenon in Trinidad and Tobago.
Agreed.
Colorism. Good night there. Colorism is a well-documented.
I was waiting for Jared to finish his point, but seemed to be going on for a long time. So I just wanted to say good night.
What?
Good night, Island Girl Seasonal. Jared, you finish your point.
Interrupt already. I lost my train of thought with a nice voice. I want to hear what she has to say.
Well, I didn't hear the conversation from the beginning. But from what I was listening to and the parts that I heard, when Knut joined, I could identify and relate to what he was saying. So I can tell you from a cultural perspective, a racial perspective, and a political perspective, because I come from the public sector. I'm of East Indian descent, and I grew up in a village called Dula Village. So, like you, Nathan, there was a lot of unity in the village that I grew up in. I was born and raised in Arima in a very multiracial, multicultural family. So, I never knew of racism until I hit like maybe secondary school. And then you kind of understand certain things. So, let me just hit on 2 points real quick. One, you asked a question with the chicken and the egg. Is it that you are more likely to be involved in crime because you're from Laventille, or is it that because you're from Laventille, the fact is that you are close proximity to it? So I'll give you a story. A long time ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I was standing in line at Payless. And in front of me, there was a little red girl. Well, not a red girl. She was a young lady of the red diaspora. She was pregnant and she had a little kid with her, but I think was 2 little children, maybe like 3 and 4 years old. And an African man with his teenage daughter. They went to it was August, so they come to shop for school shoes. And he tell his daughter, just go in front, the red girl with the pregnant. And I said to him, excuse the line is behind me, you know. Now you have to understand I'm 4'3", so I'm not very large.
Wait. Say again?
5'3".
Oh, 5'3".
I'm 5'3".
Oh.
I'm not very large and stature. And at that time I was probably the size of your baby finger, right? So I had a little more fine, little tiny voice. I was like, excuse me, the line is behind here because this is Payless on Frederick Street. And the man watched me like, and so what he didn't know was that because I'm from Arima, I braved, right? So I was like, and I didn't know Port of Spain culture that they could shoot you and things, so I big and bad. So I was like, listen, that's what you're teaching your daughter, that there's no respect for the rules and the line. There's a pregnant woman standing right there. You don't care about she then. Right? And those were the days when my father was alive. So I was the most bad thing outside there because anything wrong, daddy coming. Right? And this man started to cuss and carry on inside of Payless. Right? And it spoke to me then, and it gave me an impression then that certain types of people, right, it may be right or wrong, certain types of people think that they could do whatever they want to do, and this is what causes the denigration of society, right? So that was a bias that I had in my mind. Obviously, living abroad for some time, being interactive. I was in Scout in Marabella, so I would have interacted with more people, and you learn that maybe it's not just society, it's just the individual. People have different ways of being, because just how you have a jackass, oh, sorry, I can say that word, right?
Yeah.
African man. You have two jackass Indian, and being a jackass is not inherent to a person's race.
Correct.
Being a racist is not inherent to a person's race.
Correct.
So coming from that and pivoting into the secondary school discussion, I went to a government secondary school. Arima Government Secondary was run like a prestige school, right? One time I get put out of the school, and my father had to come so I could go back to school, because if you look at the first little joint in your finger, I had that much blue on my white sneakers, and I get put out. And my father was most pissed because it was just one little blue thing. But I left there and did my A levels at Eldo, which had no rules. And if it wasn't Form 6, even less. So you could wear any color sneakers. And I remember walking through the atrium one day and hearing my dean quarreling with a Form 4 student, because he was like, you could wear any color sneakers you want. You could wear black, you could wear blue, you could wear white, you could wear... Why are you wearing a yellow sneakers? That's not even matching with the uniform. Right? And it speaks to what you said earlier, Nathan, about rebellion. Right? Now, El Dorado Senior Comprehensive is very well known for a lot of things. Sports, cultural activities. They have a boss of a pan side.
Violence?
Anything. Yes, there's no violence. But back then it didn't have none. But when I came from Arima Government Tech, you couldn't use any computers in the computer lab. You can use the instruments in the music lab. You couldn't even go into the music lab. But in LO, free for all. You want to go in the computer? Walk in the computer room, start up a computer. You want to play pan? Walk in the pan room, pick up any instrument and play it. Free for all. And I can tell you the difference is this. While El Dorado didn't stifle creativity, it left the students with a sense of personal responsibility. So you were forced to grow up and be mature and make the right decisions on your own. Meanwhile, Arima Government Secondary, like a lot of those prestige schools, and I can tell you because my sister went to a prestige school, she went to Lakshmi Gills, you didn't have a lot of room for decision making. It was my way or go home and tell your parents bring you back. Right? Now, Central was known for very high-performing students, right? Even though we had a so-called prestige school, which is Holy Cross in Arima Government Secondary held its own in terms of academic performance. But so did Eldo. At the time. And at the time, when I had started Eldo, they had their first scholarship winner, right? So it couldn't have been for lack of good teachers in the school. It's personal responsibility, and I think what we miss here when it comes to these rules that are being applied, both societally, politically, and academically, is that we don't take personal responsibility for the decisions that we make and the things that happen to us. And I want to pivot that into the racial discussion, because I work in the public sector, and coming from a public sector background, and this is just my rough average of being very ridiculous, maybe 12 to 1 African to Indian. It's a very, very small percentage of Indian people working in the public sector. So the discussion that surrounds systematic racism that we try to import from America doesn't really apply here.
No, it doesn't.
Because Indian people don't have the power in the public sector. It doesn't. They don't.
That's no. Just what?
So I am.
Finish your point.
That is from my opinion, where I come from. In my perspective, they don't have the power, because the fact is, right, while we would like to take the easy route and say, oh well, it's this one and that one, people who have power without accountability, whether they are African, Indian, Chinese, white, or any other mix of those races, are personally responsible for the good or bad that they do, right? And people have their own personal biases. No,
Agreed.
I'm not a young thing. I'm 38 years old. And from my interactions with people, I keep trying to understand where they come from for certain things. But one of the most profound things that a friend of mine has told me is that it's not a discussion whether it's African against Indian in Trinidad and Tobago. It's rich against poor, and the smart will see it and the stupid will say it's African against Indian. Because the rich want us to keep fighting so that they have that power over us, because they will ultimately benefit. And the poor don't see further than their nose, and they see, because they don't have the time, because they're busy hustling to eat, to study their next meal, and your brain only has so much. So when I was doing my MBA, right, I didn't have much time to think about anything else but my MBA. And what consumes you is what is in front of you. Now, the rich people, right, they don't have much to worry about, because meanwhile, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, their physiological and security needs are well taken care of. So what they're looking at is actualization and how them could huff with some more money. Meanwhile, the
I don't disagree.
people, which is the greatest percentage of Maslow's hierarchy, that bottom tier, are so encapsulated with those achieving those physiological needs that it becomes an issue of who is taking it away from me. How am I not getting? And we make the mistake of making it a political issue. It is not a political
All right.
issue.
Here's where I'll say on some of that. No key, baby, come in here to have a discussion too. On the systemic racism side, I agree with you. I think that is an imported talking point about systemic racism in Trinidad and Tobago. We don't have that kind of systemic racism because the system is run by and large the majority races. And if you find there's systemic racism in there, it's because you're kind of doing it yourself to some extent. I agree. And there is a reality where the Afro population in Trinidad is more concentrated in the public service. That's a fact. And they are more concentrated in some cases, even in most cases, even in the hierarchy of the public service. That is also a fact. Now, some people say there that the multiple issues can exist at once. Correct. Some people say there that, well, they have the majority of wealth. Well, I might say to some of that, because we've had some of this public service discussion before, that maybe some Afros wanted the security and ease of public sector instead of the risk of entrepreneurship, and you see the reward and consequence of some of that. Now, the reality is there would always be tribalism, and we have two major ethno-racial groups that take up just about the same percentage in the country. So the chances of there being racial strife is 100%. There is always going to be some. That's just human nature, especially when the cultures are as varied as they are. Before we go to KBB, so go back to what you were saying about Eldo and Arima, and you said Eldo back then they performed better, but now it's not so good. Maybe, and this is the point I was making too, maybe some of the lax rules is part of the reason they couldn't continue their good performance. That's exactly the way I see it. Some of those lax rules allow for that. And for way back, a guy in the comments was saying that he believes the prestige schools and their access to infrastructure and stuff. Sir, you probably didn't go to a prestige school. Ask anyone who went to a prestige school what was the condition of their school. Most people who went to schools like that understand we had to invent labs, invent material, invent apparatus. Talk to a prestige school person and ask them the first time they went into a senior comprehensive or a junior sec, and the difference it made to them. I remember when you watch the difference and you're like, my goodness. Generally speaking, in Trinidad and Tobago, the government schools, generally speaking, have way better infrastructure than the denominational schools, you know.
They're
Way.
responsible for their own infrastructure.
They have way better. And people say it's the connections is the main thing. The connections is a big part. What I would say is the main thing in prestige schools is the culture. The culture is what creates the connections. The culture is what causes it to propagate itself. The culture. And that's what the boards try to fight to keep. KBB, what were you going to say?
I wanted to answer Island View.
Alright, go ahead, because KBB, Mike's still muted.
I'm listening. I don't have a particular here or there. I don't have like a for argument or against argument. I'm a person of gray area. I think there are a lot of things to consider. I'm not someone who thinks like this is how it is because it is. Like, I'm not like that. I like listening to people, and also I'm somebody who likes to be educated. So if I am wrong and I say something, I'm welcome to criticism and education. So I'm just listening as of right now. But the underlying point I would have to make is that where my belief in general, I do genuinely believe in systemic racism, and I do believe that on the canvas of life, African people, whether it's Afro-American, Afro-Chinese, Afro-whatever country you're from, there is an underlying disadvantage that they had to come out of. I do believe that.
Why?
I genuinely do.
Why?
Because I guess a simple argument of indentureship, a simple argument of being shipped all the way from one continent to various colonialization as an example. I do believe that even islands in themselves will reap of their riches to benefit a certain type of race, a certain type of rank, a certain type of aristocracy.
And do you think though? But do you think though that black people were unique in that they were the only ones who were treated as such?
No, because I do believe that native people, whether it's the Amerindians, the Arawaks, that was their land, and that land in itself was taken away from them to supplement the fact that these colonizers brought different races in to reap their lands for their benefit. I do believe that.
Right. So
their riches in their lands.
But
colonizers.
But you know, KBB, you're talking about a capsule of history that is 400 years maximum. The recorded history of man is about nearly 10,000 years. So in 400 years, that's what happened in those 400 years. But are you saying that little capsule of history, 400 years, has now placed the entire... well, I don't even know how you call black people as an entire race, because that's a lot of variation, but places black people all around the world into that universal victim category? Just now, I just trying to get to what KBB is saying there.
Let's take it like this. I do believe that there is systemic racism. I'm not doubting that. I see it with my own eyes, based off of stories, articles, video footage. There is systemic racism. There is an underlying agenda for the big dogs to capitalize on the fact that there are a certain percentage of Afro-American men in jails. I'm not gonna act like that's not an issue. What I'm saying is that if you look at history in and of itself, we did have an African king who was so rich. I can't remember his name.
Mansa Musa.
I did hear his story. Exactly. So rich to a point where gold in itself decreased in price because he himself gave away so much. And so
But
I do believe that at some point. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry to cut you there. To close in on a point, I'm glad you chose Mansa Musa. I'm glad you chose Mansa Musa because Gerard or Rooney. Rooney would go next and then Gerard. I think Rooney was next. Mansa Musa. I'm glad you chose him from the Mali Empire. And the Mali Empire followed the Ghana Empire, which was followed by the Songhai Empire. And almost all of those, I spoke about this before. Do you know why they collapsed? That wealthy, super wealthy empire. Why they collapsed? Not because the Europeans were racist, not because the Arabs were racist. He was very wealthy. He was making money from all of them. He was a polygamist. And they split their kingdom with their many children by multiple wives. Doesn't that tell a story even to this day? And is it systemic racism if you make choices that objectively create worse consequences? Is it systemic racism if you see those consequences reaped? Ronnie, what were you going to say?
I don't think I fully understand what you're saying, but just for me, as a person who's of a fairer complexion, if I see a person like Rodney King in the 1990s riots getting completely advantaged how he was, and then you see certain videos pop up after that. So, like, for me, that's my complexion. I'm not someone of African descent. I'm someone of a fair. I don't even know what I am. I just mix. I just fair and I mix. I can't tell you what I am. I know certain things. I have East Indian in my Scottish and my rah. I know I'm not in a definitive surety of my race as you might be. You know your ethnicity.
Not really.
I personally can't tell you unless I do some digging. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I can't say with my own eyes. For 10 flicking white man to become Rodney King, how they did something is flicking wrong. And that was the first video to surface. And then now, these decades later, we see the videos we see it now. Just the other day, I watching a video, this woman who's a social worker, now reach home from work, now taking off her clothes to take a shower, and the Chicago PD bust down her door, claiming, oh, she had guns in the house. And
but do you know? Have you checked the videos?
Yeah.
Have you checked the videos and statistics on blacks versus Asian crime rates? And if you're looking at videos, if you go looking for videos of bad things that police did to black people, that'll get you really vexed. But for example, if I was an Asian person and I went looking for videos and statistics, because it's proven in the statistics too, of what black people do to Asians, I would start to think that black people are systemically racist against Asians. Because black people, at least in the United States, black people in the United States...
There was a reason for black people to also believe that Asians were racist against them, because the first one...
And the consequence of that is to rob them and murder them?
No. Remember what happened to the young girl, the school girl? She went to buy orange juice.
I remember what happened to the Asian grandmother who was murdered by two black men. Those things happen.
And remember the young African.
Here's the thing, K-Baby. We could go with anecdotes. You could pull up the statistics here. The US keeps those things very strictly. Check Asian on black crime and then check black on Asian crime. The disparity is astounding. And here's the thing, K-Baby. I find it weird that when we speak about, police seem to be attacking black men more. People like automatically, oh, that's evil. But when we say black men seem to be attacking Asian more, we start to equivocate. Well, the reason for that is then, don't you think there may be an underlying reason why maybe the police attack black men more? Isn't that possible too? Is it possible that black men are overrepresented in violent crime, so the police interact with them more?
But I also think that people have to develop a defense mechanism in the environment they live. And so if you as a young teenage girl of African descent walk into a mini-mart owned by a Korean family and you bought some orange juice and that Korean female owner telling you something, you whatever it is, and you turn your back to walk out the store and she shoots you in your back, that says something too. So the thing about it is that at the end of the day,
But
I think the roots,
I don't understand how that point matters. That is one, and just as that one happens, 1,000 of those happens for that one. For the one black girl shot in her back for the orange juice, 1,000 Asians are murdered by black people. What does that do to the Asian community?
No. I'm sorry to say, Nathan, but at that time, no, it wasn't like that. No, yes, I can see it now, but back then, no.
Back then is how long ago? Back then is how long ago?
That was right before Rodney King, and this girl walked into the store to this orange juice. Something happened between
Alright. Ronnie, go ahead.
Because there wasn't that amount of crime. No, when Asians actually, the Korean
The Rodney King incident, KBB, just to crown this off. Just to crown this off, bear in mind the Rodney King incident was at the peak of the crack epidemic with the crime wave of the 80s coming into the 90s. So there was a lot of crime. It wasn't crimeless. Go ahead, Ronnie. And then Gerard.
That's what Rodney King was. That is what that culminated to.
Ronnie, go ahead.
When you look at the 1990 riots, and I think people should really go and just check it out. It's really a baffling story to hear.
I did check it out. I have read on it before.
It's amazing. They have a documentary on Netflix. It's an amazing story.
And bear in mind some things you watch are propaganda. Yeah, Ronnie. Yes, I believe what you're saying. I have watched a lot of those documentaries, and the statistics hit me very differently. Ronnie, go ahead.
Yeah. I just say that. Oh, sorry. Go
ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah. So, Island Girl, who I was supposed to be responding to. So, Island Girl, forgive me for coming so late after. If you don't already discard this information, it's fine.
I'm on mute. I right here, listen.
Okay. So you were saying that in the public service, you would see a lot more Afro and than Indo Trinidadians, and that's true. That's true.
I mean, I have the statistics. I'm an auditor, so I have the statistics.
Right. So you are an auditor, as in Tower D auditor or internal?
No. I am an auditor in terms of I have access to information that a lot of people don't have, and I have statistics to see what I am seeing.
Right.
I believe you, though, fully.
I'm not denying what you're saying, but Nathan, it's so funny. No, I'm not denying what you're saying. I am agreeing. However, you would see them, like, you would see a large disproportion in race in certain ministries, because back in the days, this was like 30-something years ago, because I got it from somebody who just recently retired or whatever, and they were telling me, well, when they went to their ministry, when service come send them to the ministry was quote-unquote interviewing, right? So when you come, they quote-unquote interview you, and they would send you back to service commission if you did not have a particular look. Right?
I'm good, Josiah.
Pardon?
No, you. That's answering somebody.
So in those ministries where it had that quote-unquote interview, you would find that it have a lot of Indo Trinidadians dominating that place. For instance, the one when I knew had a lot of Afro Trinidadians because they did not care to do any interview. Your service comes and you okay, we take you. But the next one where I was kind of interviewed, and they have a lot, like literally everybody in the line for the top position I'm talking the next 5 people in line is East Indian. Like,
so I can tell you from actual information that I have that there was a point within in the 80s in the public service that if you were an East Indian applying through the service commission, and this is from somebody who worked in the service commission at the time, they would place you because they have no choice if you have the qualification, right? But if you're from Barrackpore, they send in you Diego Martin to the post office. Or if you're from Waterloo, they send in you Blanche Shares to teach. And this went on well into the 2000s. And I actually have actual information of this, right? So while it is not being denied and you have that particular type of look, my issue with these types of stories, and which is why I didn't reference them before, is because a story is a story. As an auditor, I go with numbers. I don't believe anything except in numbers. My boyfriend, if he had to tell me he loved me, I'd say to numbers, right? Count 1 plus 1, I love you, right? The thing that I'm saying is that when we come to speak about systemic racism, we must, and any type of generalization, we must be like the Americans, because as it is our current data source, which is Central
CSO.
Right, the CSO, they're at least 8 years behind in terms of data collection. When we make these types of generalizations, these types of decisions with
the CSO gets a little more up to date, though, eh? A little more.
Well, not not completely, but we need to have more type of information updated. It's like this: your mother going to the shop or the grocery. She have $5 in her name and it costs $5 for 3 eggs. She wants to bake a cake for your brother this evening. She knows she have 3 eggs in the kitchen. Oh, she call and say lunchtime and she say, "I still have the 3 eggs," and you say, "Yeah." Right? Between lunchtime and 6 o'clock when she reach home, somebody cooked the 3 eggs or 2 out of the 3 eggs. Right? The information that she had is no longer up to date.
Yep.
She can't make the cake, right? Because she don't have the egg. What I'm saying is information and data and resources need to be up to date. When we make these types of generalizations, and I keep hearing this imported kind of systemic racism, and people think they're white, and let me tell you something. As growing up as an East Indian, I never in my life thought I was white. As a matter of fact, East Indian people don't like white people.
That's a generalization.
We didn't like them because they colonized other countries and they treat us like crap, right? So I saw a Denzel Washington movie in the 80s, from the 80s or the 90s, that told that Indian woman, all they just feel like they like white people, and all of us and East Indian people feel we don't like white people. We don't even feel we are like white people. White people just keep saying this. Parroted because it helps a narrative.
Wait, before we go on, bear in mind.
Island girl, you're a statisticist, right? You're a statisticist.
No. The word is statistic.
No, but like you deal with statistics. No, it sounds like a funny word. I'm sorry.
I know the word you're saying. It's just how it sounds.
She legitimate is talking. Alright, I'm gonna meet my mom, but girl, you talking fast. Go ahead.
Here's the thing with that. I agree with what you're saying there, Island Girl, in terms of systemic. For something to be systemic, for you to put that allegation out there, you must be able to prove it. As someone said before, I will, Jared, I will. As someone said before, with redlining, etc. in the United States had clear systemic racism, where the system had devices and mechanisms in it designed as such to be biased based along racial lines. Inside of Trinidad, here's the thing. You see how you speak about that in the public service there? I do not doubt it. I do not doubt it one moment. And I do not doubt that somebody would be able to show something on the other side where they knew of some Indian... I know someone that spoke about an Indian teacher they had and some things that they said and kept back. And there would be those stories. The problem with stories on the both sides like that is neither of those prove systemic racism. It proves that racists exist and racism exists in the country. And I don't think anybody in Trinidad and Tobago really doubts that. I mean, racists exist everywhere. Prejudice is inherent in humanity. But that doesn't mean it is systemic. Now, you have to be very careful in such a case how you go just throwing anecdotes from one side to the next, because you'll never really get a conclusion to that. Gerard, I'm asking you, Gerard. Oh gosh, sorry. Gerard, I'll reverse my ask and let Ronnie finish, then I would ask you. Ronnie, finish, sorry.
Because my point was nowhere near what you were saying. Sorry. But what I was saying is, no, I'm not saying that practice happens now, because it does not happen. That practice happened for a little while, and then they will fall on their practice and they stopped, right? So I'm not saying, and I'm making it for it. What I'm saying is, you would see in certain places, you would find more of one and more of the other because of those practices that would have probably taken place for a period of like a short period, right? No problem. But as far as, let me just end here. I don't like the use of American statistics in regard to racism in Trinidad and Tobago, because it's totally very different, right? Their racism is, I guess, well documented, and it is very different from what we have.
I agree with what Little Miss Mediator, 100% on that. 100.
Snap.
They literally had laws that made it okay to be racist. We didn't have laws. We had people practicing racism, which is so different, because if you practice racism against me, I could, defend myself in some which way, or form I could go and get a lawyer or something like that. But when it is by law that you could be racist to somebody, then there's no justice for you, which is totally different, which is why I don't really agree with the systematic racism in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't see it. I see it as a personal thing. I see people being racist to one another, but I don't see it as a system.
Okay, Gerard. I'm asking you now, Gerard.
Yes, sir. What's the question?
Is there systemic racism in Trinidad? Where is it?
Are you asking me to demonstrate systemic racism?
Yes. Demonstrate it to me.
Yes, please. I want to hear.
Right. So let us start with the issue of generational wealth. And let's go back.
I have a question. Sorry, before you go on.
The floor is mine.
No, I just mean what the girl was saying before about local racism and foreign racism. Can you include that as well?
I'm not allowing any questions at this time. You can ask a question, I'm answering these questions.
Answer away, Gerard.
And then we could solve for X.
Yes, yeah.
There's a massive disparity in generational wealth between African families and everybody else, not even making it about India, in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm going to start this by saying that the financial fortunes of any other ethnic group in Trinidad and Tobago is completely irrelevant to this conversation. So what the Indians or the Portuguese, I'm a little bit of Portuguese myself, or the Chinese, or the whites, or anybody does, is irrelevant to the conversation.
Okay.
I want us to remember that we are a former colony.
Correct.
This country is 50 years old. Roughly. Forgive me. If we're 57, forgive me. We are a young country. We were allowed to run our own country in the late 60s.
Early 60s.
And I want to carry us straight back to indentureship and why indentureship happened.
Okay.
Indentureship was essentially union busting. Post-slavery, in a plantation economy, which the entire world was at the time, when the British changed the laws so that to pick up steam. You can't have slaves no more. And in Trinidad and Tobago, the Africans were cultivating and they were doing well. And the British, I want you to understand colonialism. Colonialism is white supremacy, and white supremacy is we better than everybody, you know.
Wait, you see, wait. Sorry, Jared. I can't let you continue because that is incorrect. That is incorrect. There were Japanese colonists. There are Japanese colonists. There were Chinese. Right now, China is attempting to do neo-colonialism in Africa.
Okay, please allow me all the same. Please allow me all the same.
All right, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Right. So we have to remember that policy in Trinidad and Tobago, colonial policy, was about what do we do with our former slaves? How do we treat with our former slaves? So the colonial policies were always about subjugation of the black person. And that was not beneficial. I am not here to tell you because the East Indians had it hard. It was a tough journey to the top. It was a long road to the top.
Mm-hmm.
But the point of the matter is, they were not the problem. The problem was the butlers. The problem was the Ciprianis. The problem was the idea of black consciousness. So the policies and the practices was to keep black people out of key positions. Up to independence, we never had a black senior police officer. Up to the 70s, you have black power and move fighting for the most basic of rights. And if you come forward, even into the 80s and the 90s, you were realizing that institutions in government, institutions in commercial, they were being forced into a fella that looked like Nathan could get a job. They were being dragged into that world against their will.
So what remains of that world? What remains of that world? Of that systemic world?
Let me tell you what remains of that world today in 2023.
Monopoly.
And since we don't have statistics, I want to take, let's call it qualitative observations about how people are doing in Trinidad and Tobago. And wealth is the work that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
So I watch what is going on. You go on a plane. The people on the plane heading to somewhere nice for a vacation in 2023. They're less likely to look like me and you, Nita.
But that's not systemic racism.
Wait. That's not what I'm saying. You're asking me how it is expressed or how it
No. I am not asking you how it is expressed. I'm not asking you how it is expressed.
What I am saying.
There are disparities all over the world. I want an example of systemic racism.
You promise me. I wait patiently. You promise me.
But you're not answering me. You gave me 10 minutes and no answer, Gerard.
Let's not keep your camera.
Go ahead, Gerard. I'm waiting. I'm waiting on the landing. I really am waiting on the landing.
Please allow me to finish and we're going to deconstruct what I'm saying.
Okay.
You cannot divorce
150
years of colonialism.
Correct.
You cannot divorce up to the 80s with systemic ingrained policy against black people and nobody else. You can't forget black power. You can't forget make move. And then in 2023, not a good 40 years later, you see it didn't have systemic racism. Absolutely had systemic racism.
Whoa. You're changing what I'm saying, Gerard.
You're saying it did not have systemic racism.
I never said it didn't. I said it doesn't.
I rest.
So, okay.
What your thoughts are what I'm saying.
Here are my thoughts about that. I am not arguing whether there was systemic racism. I am not arguing that. What you are saying here, you are basically reiterating the same thing Little Miss Mediator said. Not about colonialism, about Trinidad having colonial trauma. That's a different thing than systemic racism. And obviously, history has long-reaching consequences. Just now, I'm not finished.
It's absolutely ongoing, sir.
Here's the thing.
Historical injustices are not being corrected. It is absolutely an ongoing crime.
Here's why I don't agree with what you're saying there. What you're saying there is going into the Black Marxist movement, the Black Liberation movement that was going into the Black Marxist movement, because the solution you are talking about is that somehow we have to make restitution for the wrongs that were done, and we have to bring back up black people because the generational wealth of black people is lower, so we have to do something to bring up their generational wealth. I'm sorry, nearly anything as such would be criminal and would cause worse long-reaching consequences. We don't fix history by trying to do wait, let me finish, please. We don't fix history by trying to do unfairness in the present. If there was unfairness in the past, we remove the unfairness. We understand, yes, there are going to be consequences lasting on into the future, but we cannot expect to keep trying to put our thumbs on the scale on one side or the other to balance it back. That's not how it works. That is not going to make progress.
Me as somebody of a lighter complexion, coming from the race I come of, I myself have to have a responsibility to understand that there are reparations, because even in England, we're not talking about people of African descent. We're talking about what English people did to the Indian country. The country itself, India. And the fact that what happened, there are reparations to be had.
Yes.
You can't ignore that.
Yes.
Reparations need to be had, because at the ending of the day, these countries.
Here's the thing, baby. Before we go into that, here's the thing. If you can identify and quantify that, by all means. So, for example, in the United States, the freed slaves, the freedmen in the United States, they're arguing for their reparations, and they have a legal claim on it because they were promised 40 acres and a mule. And probably if you could trace your ancestry back to someone who was promised the 40 acre and a mule, you could probably try to get it in present time. That's something like that. But when you're talking about historical injustices, so the British were in here and they treated the Africans bad, but they also treated the Indians bad too, because I read during the Indian arrival last year, I went through a whole series on some of the real crazy wickedness they did to the Indians. Some of the people, and that's why, for example, when people make too many mean jokes about Indians living in the swamplands and you should not build on the river, sometimes you don't understand the historical context of it. Don't you find it strange all Afros are in the East-West corridor and the Indians are in the South? How did that happen? Historical context too. So yes, there was systemic racism against the Indians. The reason Indians are in the swamplands and being flooded out right now is because of systemic racism through history. However, there isn't systemic racism now. What? Sorry?
Racism. Let me tell you something about racism that's going on now, right? A lot of it has to do with a hidden agenda. It's about resources. It's about extracting wealth from native people of African countries, people of India. And a lot of times
you don't understand. What you're talking about is white supremacists, you know. Talking about the world, like if the whole world was at the mercy of the white man, and you know the story of Earth is the white man. Wait. Let me finish. Why I'm saying that? It comes from a racist point of view, where you're coming from a white-centric point of view. This is the white man seeing himself as the hero in this story. I did so much bad, and I have to go out there and heal the world. Listen, the Romans before tried to conquer the world. The Persians before tried to do it. There were African empires that conquered mass areas of Africa. The Arabs did it. The Spanish did it. The English did it. It's just the history of humanity. We cannot go and try and rectify all of the atrocities through humanity. I heard you talk about the land belonged to the natives. Which natives? Which ones? Because you know the natives were murdering each other for the very same land.
Yeah, and reality of the situation. You look at the Cold War, for example, right? Where you feel the Russians just decide to go in Afghanistan. No, there were resources to be extracted in the Middle East. And the Americans' so-called agenda was to protect Afghanistan, go into the Middle East, drive out the Russians. What you feel was to protect the people of Afghanistan? No, it was so they could get the resources over the Russians. It's all an agenda. We're all a pawn in a game. And the reality of it is, oh, he Afghani or he African or whatever it is. But let me try to manipulate the situation in such a way to fulfill our agenda. The agenda was resources.
Yes.
People were utilized and the country was extracted for their resources.
Yes.
That is why the Russians were drove out during the Cold War. When the Americans got in now and Qatar, right?
Yes.
Qatar and Iraq was going to war. You understand? Well, here what America say, well, we have to defend the Iraqis and whatever.
I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying there.
Enemy of all of them now. Guess who's the biggest enemy of all of them now? Not America. America say, you know what, we're not even supposed to be here. But the reality of it was oil, natural gas.
Yeah.
That was the resources they had.
Yes. Yes.
Therefore, over time, they realized too much money going into this and we're not getting nothing out of it. And too many casualties happened out of it through our citizens and through the Afghani, the Middle Eastern people. And said, let me just drive out of there. We had no business in Afghani.
That's not why they left. They didn't want to leave, actually. They didn't want to leave, actually. That's not totally the case.
It came to a point because of those actions and because of the hidden agenda of the Americans. Now Muslims are persecuted in America because everybody deem America. I'm not talking about 9/11, but whoever, Osama is a dick. Let me agree with that. But what I'm saying is, it came from somewhere and everybody had to suffer for it because of the agendas of these idiots who try to extract resources and then people fighting against people trying to extract those resources. Who are the casualties? What do people have to suffer?
But just now, KBB, who doesn't try to extract resources? You're talking about the history of the world there. Okay, the history of the world is that, wait. The history of the world is that the powerful have always tried to extract resources from the weaker. Okay, that's the history of the world. I don't understand what's the strange thing there. Nothing is new about it. It wasn't strange when the Europeans did it. It wasn't strange when the Africans did it. It wasn't strange when the... Wait. Some of us are so white-centric. We didn't even pay attention to the Japanese on the other side of the world. Did you know what the Japanese were doing in the 20th century on the other side of the world? Have you go listen, go read up the rape of Nanjing. It's not white or black or the minorities or the Afghan. Listen, there were Afghans inside of Afghanistan. The reason that Afghanistan became a hellhole in the 90s after the US left with their proxy war nonsense with Russia is because when they left, the men that they left, the Mujahideen, that they trained, they were Afghanis, and they turned their own country into a group of warring tribes because they were doing the same thing, warring over resources. It's the history of man.
Al-Qaeda, the Mujahid, like you said, I can't pronounce the name right, Nathan, the
Mujahideen.
ISIS and whatever it is, those are actually fractions, not all their ideals lined up. You have to understand that too, right? Like I said.
Yes. All right. We stray real far, of course, KBB. Island Girl, we passed 12 too. Island Girl, we are now close here. Sorry for cutting you all. I know the discussion going good, but we past 12. So, Island Girl, let me get a closing from you. We'll get a closing from you and from Rooney, and we'll go on.
So I just want to say I'm glad that we have some consensus on literally the starting point of this discussion from where I started in terms of this child, and apparently where somebody didn't get to graduate.
They graduated, but they didn't get to cross the stage.
Yeah. Oh well, that's unfortunate. Whether it's colonial, whether we want to call it systemic racism, whether we want to admit it or don't admit it, who is the most racist, if they're Indian, if they're black, whatever, we all live here together. We all live here together, and I believe inherently we all don't hate each other, because I don't know of any East Indian person that doesn't have at least one black best partner. I don't know of any African who doesn't interact and have at least one Indian brother. When it comes down to it, I think that what we need to focus on is going forward. And this is kind of like where we lose ourselves, because we get so wrapped up in wanting to be right. Everybody can accept at some point in time, if you're an adult, I don't know everything. There is a lot of learning done, right? And if we want to really make a change, we have to start from somewhere and meet in the middle. And that's kind of like where I want to wrap this up.
Yep.
You know? So thanks a lot, Nathan, for having me, and everybody else as well.
My pleasure. I have a really good Indian friend too.
We all have a really good Indian friend. Listen, when you go outside here, right now I'm not in Trinidad, I'm in Antigua, right? And they don't have a lot of Indian people here, so they usually mistake us for either Guyanese or Indian from India. But the other Trinidadians here have African descent, you know, and whenever I make a roti, they're glad to come over and eat, and we're glad to have them, and I love getting all the compliments. Oh, good, this roti's so soft. Oh, good, this roti's so nice. So listen, we have to take care of each other. Trinidadians spread far and wide throughout the world, you know, and when you go outside here and it's you against the world, then you will see whether they're black, white, East Indian, whatever it is, a Trini is a Trini, and they will take care of you, and more people need to know that. More people need to recognize you and know this love.
Yeah, Rooney, let me hear you.
Yeah, so I was saying, I was saying before, I have no Indian friends and I have no African friends. I have Trinidadian friends, because I don't like this Afro and Indo thing. I am a Trini, I born here, I don't know nothing else. I am a Trinidadian, and that is fine. That's all I want. That's the only classification I want on me. Right? I might be black, or I might be of a different hue or whatever, but I think Trini is fine enough. It was okay, I guess. I would like to talk someone. Jared point about back in the days, back 120 something years and wherever he wants to go back to, and who halan and who do halan and all kind of thing. In Tobago, everybody have and everybody in Tobago, majority of Tobagonians have Afro Trinidadian. So, and you know the funny thing about it, the same Afro Trinidadian that own the land selling it at a very farm. So these are the things that we do or we did that throws all our generational wealth out the window. And we don't like to take that responsibility, that personal responsibility that Island Girl was talking about before. When you make decisions and stuff, you have personal responsibility. I think that we don't like personal responsibility. It's always easier to say, well, is the system fault, or is the food master fault, or is the government fault, is the queen fault, is everybody's fault except your own. But if you start taking personal responsibility, then you could make personal choices that could change where you are. If you can't see that you could make the changes, you'll never make any changes and you'll stay where you are. We would be 500 years to come, it will have people just like me that will be blooming in slavery for where they are still. 1,000 years later, they will say, well, I was a slave, and to the point of the Holocaust, the Jews don't even want reparations. The Jews don't want the money. They say nice blood money, but we still fighting over the stupid money that we're not going to get. Oh my goodness. Pick yourself up and do your Stop looking around and pointing at everybody. Look at yourself.
Yeah, Gerard, closing.
Closing comments. The child will burn the village to feel its warmth.
Yeah.
Black people in Trinidad and Tobago, Indian people in Trinidad and Tobago, everybody in Trinidad and Tobago has been leaving the child in the cold for decades. And they started taking cheap contract killings as the new hustle of 2023. Live in a country where anybody could hire a gunman for about $2,000 to out your light.
Yeah.
Let us make sure, going back to where this conversation started, let us make sure that our children can feel the warmth of the village without burning it down.
Agreed.
And everybody who knows better should not only do better for themselves, but show somebody next to them the game, instead of leaving them to drown in the crimes of the past. My closing comment.
Agreed. Fully agreed. I like that. I like that. You have any closing there, K-Baby?
Yeah, I just want to say, I have an Afro-Trini friend, like you have an East Indian friend, so I don't really... Nah, Nathan, I appreciate you because these conversations do need to be had. And I'm someone who's a student. In my life, I will always be a student. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate your life because it is educational. Maybe a person of my complexion and my upbringing will not know obviously will not know your experience, but I like that you have this life to educate people like me, so I appreciate that. And I just think that these conversations need to be had, and the way that this panel handled said conversation was very mature. It was respectable, and keep doing what you're doing. Like, honestly, we don't have to battle, we don't have to argue, we just have to come together and have a conversation, not a debate, not a who's right and who's wrong. We can share information and learn from it. So I consider myself learning from your life, and I appreciate you having me tonight. That's all I had to say.
Nice.
And I look forward to the next one. So thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah. Glad you're here. All right, people. That's all I have for now. This has been the Mindful Life. I'll be here again tomorrow. Tomorrow is Wednesday, middle of the week. You know, we talk Tobago. We're over on the sister isle, you know, Tobago, the bacchanal always bubbling over there. Bago.
Tobago is summertime, let me get some crab and dumpling in Bago,
I have to touch down Bago. I feel like I would have to do a Bago live from Bago. It must happen this summer. It must happen. Roni, it must happen. Bago must see me. Alright, people, I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. This.
I never had a heartbreak like the one I had when I missed Boys to Men in Tobago Jazz Festival. Oh God, I go cry. But yeah.
This has been.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. This has been the Mindful Live. I'll see you guys again. Make sure you go follow Mindful Education. We have our Java educational camp coming up this July-August vacation. If you are interested in that, you have a student from learning stage preschool right all the way up to CXC. You are interested in getting access to that, hit us up. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Until then, stay safe. Laters. Peace.